sandals packed, drives a sunbird sedan. She keeps the comfort zone close, but my favorite is all the white parts of a tan bikini. Glad so teeny, write our names in the sand. Got a tattoo on her pumpkin, and her smile is really something. In a time of certainly at hand, the white parts of a tan, the white parts of a tan. I can feel in her hand and her feet in the sand, and her wishes my command. The burning sun in the sky is gonna really amplify all the white parts of a tan, revealing string bikini, long hair blows in the wind, and a gentle touch is something. We're a natural conjunction in the sun with a beautiful plan. The white parts of a tan, the white parts of a tan.
That's the white parts of her tan. That is my wicked twin, Brent Jerner. Check it out, My Wicked Twin, wherever music is sold. You can check it out. That is the white parts of her tan. It's a summer song, and summer is winding down. We're down to the last few days of summer. I got out for some really, really great motorcycle rides this week, and I want to talk about that briefly. And then we're going to open up the chat room. We're going to talk about all things independent music tonight, all things that are happening in the world of independent music, and some really, really strange stuff, right? Some strange stuff. How about bot farms? B-O-T. That's like a B-O-T farm, right? Do you know what those are? We're going to talk about what bot streaming is doing to the music industry, as we call it. One of those broken things. Hang on a sec. I got to get rid of something here. Just a minute. The maid did not clean up today. Yeah, the maid hasn't been in here for a while, so we're packing up a few things here and getting the studio ready to, move it on over. We'll be talking about that. Maybe we'll talk about that tonight. But before we do, I want to talk about the rides we've made the last few days with my buddy Rob. He calls himself Bob as well. We traveled all over southwestern Ontario, all the way from Niagara Falls, all the way up to Owen Sound and around all those areas, about 300 and 350 miles a day, riding and touring around southwestern Ontario, checking out what the last days of summer have to offer, and sampling some craft brew across the way. We stopped the other day in Formosa Springs. Today we were in another brewery down near Long Point. That's between Long Point and Turkey Point. We were down there today. You can see the reels up on Facebook and Instagram. You can check those out as well. Want to talk about some stuff that's happening at Indie Tunes Records. We've got a whole bunch of new music coming out. Currently, we're releasing a whole bunch of music by Helix. And those singles are all coming out at you every 2 weeks. September the 12th, Razorback came out by GM Blacktop. Check it out. Go and listen to it wherever music is sold or streamed or downloaded. Check it out. Razorback by GM Blacktop. The single White Lace and Black Leather, which is the title track off of Helix's second studio album, which sold about 15,000 copies originally back in 1981. The band sold all of those themselves. So interesting to note that it can be done, right? There's a lot of cool shit that can be done, and that's one of them. So White Lace and Black Leather, that'll come out this Friday, September the 19th. So check that out right on the heels of the end of summer. And then later on, we have some more music coming out from Helix as well. When the Fire is Hot will be coming out on October the 3rd. That is a track that was never released. It was actually sent to Capitol Records as a demo, and I've had a chance to remaster it and put it into some new artwork. So I'm really excited about that one as well. And then we have a new single out by GM Blacktop coming out on October 17th called You Just Don't Know. Some of this stuff he recorded down in Nashville. Some of it was recorded with Daryl Gray, who some of you may know is the bass guitarist for Helix. Daryl is an excellent producer. He's also a multi-instrumentalist. He has some great chops. And he and Brent Durner both enjoy production of music. And they help out a lot of people that have been on the label from time to time. So that's some stuff that's happening in the world of music, in our world of music anyway. And there's about another, 4 or 5 singles that'll be coming out. Oh, yes, I also want to talk about Just Like You. That is a single released on September the 12th. That came out just about a week ago. It's a tune by Boiler Beach. It is sort of a punk tune. Interesting tune. You should listen to it. We were very successful in playlist pitching that particular single, and it got picked up on some playlists through a Discovery Radar, through through Spotify. And so we publish all of our music on all digital streaming platforms, but Spotify gives artists some very unique, and labels some really unique marketing tools that are completely legit. Now, I want to talk about the illegit stuff because last week when we had Michael Brandvold on, he was talking about how people are using bot farms and all kinds of other things to game the system. So gaming the system essentially is getting numerous streams on your music in order to get, tons of attention on your music. The upside of that is that, yes, it does work only for a limited time. And then all of a sudden your music gets yanked down. Now, this has happened to a few artists that I'm aware of, where they have had their music up on legitimate streaming services, and somehow, somewhere along the line, the aggregator that they use, whether it's CD Baby or whether it's TuneCore, whether it's DistroKid, has come along and said, we have to pull your music, but it's because it's been detected to have artificial streaming. So here's the rub on this. There's a whole lot of outcry right now. There's some YouTubers, Venus Theory for one. Check him out. He's got a great video talking about this very subject and how it really screws up music for rights holders, because the music ends up getting pulled off Spotify. Now, Spotify is the only service so far doing this, but they point the finger at the aggregator. So the publisher that you're using for uploading your music, which never existed before, right? So you've got, companies like CD Baby, TuneCore, DistroKid, and a few others. Ditto, I believe, was one as well. And the thing about these streaming, these aggregators, is that they had to sign deals with the streaming services, mainly Spotify, saying that if Spotify told them that an artist's music had artificial streams on it, that they were obligated to yank the music. They're the publisher. Spotify cannot pull your music down unilaterally. They have to go back to their agreements that they have with aggregators, or what we call digital music publishers. So back in the day, if you were a record label, you used white label services, and some of the record labels had direct publishing rights arranged with companies like Spotify and iTunes and maybe a few others, Deezer being some, Tidal being others. And they would exclusively upload artist music to those streaming services, and they had very, very specific contracts with Spotify and iTunes, because in order for those streaming services to get their catalogs, they actually had to enter into contracts with the record labels. Now, the record labels look at streaming largely as loss leader. And most of you know what a loss leader is, but I'm going to explain it anyway. Essentially, a loss leader is something that's priced well below what the retailer pays for it, but it's to get people to come in the store. It's get the people to come in and look at the other products that are there. And they're usually placed in strategic places in the stores that gets you walking by things like essentials. Oh, yeah, I need a jug of milk. Oh, yeah, I need some cheese. Oh, yeah, I need this or that. So essentially, that is what's happened here, is that Spotify, iTunes, and others needed those catalogs, and they had to give honey deals to the record labels. The major record labels penned those deals with those streaming services, and that is what everyone gets in terms of streams, pays per stream, which usually works out to somewhere around, a 16th of a cent. Sometimes it's a 10th of a cent. So 10 streams equals a penny. So do the math on that, figure that out. You got to get millions of streams to make some money. Now, when they started up these streaming services, the belief was that they were not going to get millions of streams or hundreds of thousands of streams. They were going to get billions of streams, that major artists out there, and I'm not going to name them because I don't really want to advertise the mainstream so much, but mainstream artists were getting billions of streams. Therefore, in order for them to strike a deal with these major labels, they had to come up with a payout strategy that would not break the bank, would keep shareholders happy. So now you've got companies like Spotify that are, Daniel Ek is maybe the exec. He is not really the owner of Spotify anymore. It's largely owned by stakeholders, shareholders, people that trade stock on the stock market. If you really wanted to make money at Spotify, you should have bought Spotify stock way back when Spotify first put stocks on the market, because their stocks have all doubled since they first started up. So you would have doubled, maybe even tripled your money on Spotify stock. Okay. So all these companies, including Apple Music, iTunes, Deezer, Tidal, they're all owned by large investment companies who have major stakes in them, who have big portfolios in them, and have investors with billions of dollars who buy this stock. So it has to trade high in order for these stockholders to make money. Okay. The least of their concerns seems to be the artists and protecting the rights of the artists. So now let's go back a little bit in history, and we think way back to the times of Napster and LimeWire. If you don't know who Napster and LimeWire were, they were essentially file sharing services that allowed people to share music files across the internet. Largely, those were MP3s, usually in low res format, maybe 128-bit, maybe 256 if you were lucky. But they were fairly low to mid res MP3 files that were shared across the internet, and people could get them for free. So you could literally download catalogs and catalogs of artist music for free. enters Lars Ulrich. Now, everybody knows who he is. He's the drummer for Metallica. Lars decides to launch a lawsuit against Napster to shut them down. And of course, LimeWire ended up following suit. They eventually got shut down. All of a sudden, the music industry is scrambling, going, what do we do? How do we manage this? How do we handle streaming? So we have to, first of all, we need to get the catalogs of the major artist music. We have to have somebody that's willing to put out platforms. Okay. And these platforms are no small feat. They're built on largely platforms using a, and I'm not a really techno savvy guy, but if you heard the name Python in terms of writing code for internet, look it up, Python. These allow streaming services to stream multiple streams of music. So thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of users can stream the same song at the same time, and it really doesn't affect the bandwidth. That's how fast these services have to be built. Now, those backbones that those services sit on, so we're talking Spotify, iTunes, Deezer, Tidal, Apple Music, Amazon Music, all those services sit on backbones that allow multiple users to stream the music without, slowing things down or getting files that actually buffer when you're trying to play them. Now, if you want to avoid any kind of buffering at all, if you got shitty, slow internet, download the music into your library. There's a great way to do it. Now, we also sell our artist music on our website. You can download whole catalogs of artist music off our website for a fraction of the price you would pay anywhere else. And some of those albums, 10-track albums, are selling for as little as $5. So you're talking 50 cents a track, basically. But when you buy a track worth 50 cents from an artist, think of how long it takes them to get 50 cents. They need 500 or more streams to make 50 cents. You made them their first 50 cents just by downloading one track. So this equates, in my analogy, to what vinyl sales used to be like. Digital sales have the opportunity to do the same thing. And at the same point in time, you can support your favorite artists by downloading their music as opposed to streaming it. And you can download it for a very small price. And you can download it usually in high-res audio, usually 320 kilobits, which is just a shade down below 16-bit, which is CD quality. Now, the average listener does not care about that. Only audiophiles are really interested in that, and true audiophiles actually probably more into vinyl than they are into high-res audio. But there is lossless audio, so all of our artist music is also published on Apple Music, which has lossless content, and we upload in 24-bit WAV format. So if you want to listen to files that are full-on WAV masters, that's what they are. We upload WAV masters in 24-bit audio. You can listen to them in lossless content on Apple Music. So there's one way to go about listening to it lossless. If you wanted to order it lossless from me, I could probably figure out a way to put it all up there on our website if there's demand for it. Right now, everything's in 320 kilobit, and listening to it in your car, on your earbuds, on your favorite listening device, you're not going to tell the difference between that and anything else. So there's the thing. So if you got some questions, you can go to the chat room, join me in the chat room, say hey. Always nice to say hi to everybody. So right now, there's some stuff that you probably don't know, and this is about bot farms. This whole bot streaming thing is a big deal. And how bots are actually affecting this. There's a case right now sitting in Denmark that highlights how people with a little bit of technological knowledge could manipulate music streaming services for personal gain. And it's happening. What they're doing is they're going on their fictitious artists or even using AI music to do this and garnering hundreds of thousands of streams. And what they're doing is they're adding legitimate artists' music to their playlists. And then what they're doing is they're using bot farms, which are essentially, a whole bunch of cell phones up on a wall that are all interconnected, and they all multiple stream at one time. So, a good bot farm can do like 1,000 streams per session. So if the song is an average of 3 minutes and 30 seconds long, it's every 3 minutes and 30 seconds, that song has been streamed 1,000 times. So think about how many times they can hit, the first 1,000. Hey, Kyle, how's it going, buddy? Kyle Alt's joining us from Abaddon's End. We got, I know Keith's watching this as well. Some people are not active in the chat room, but I'm glad some of you are. So let's talk about what bot farms are doing and how they're affecting you and how they could be really bad. So this case out of Denmark, if you want to check it, it's posted by a company called Wolf Law in Miami. I can post the link for you and you can read through the article yourself. But I'm going to hit some highlights here. So this case in Denmark right now highlights how people with a little bit of tech knowledge can manipulate music streaming services for personal gain. And it's not the first case of its type, but its scope makes it noteworthy, right? So the man who's been convicted of criminal fraud created thousands of bots that he programmed to listen to music on Spotify. Specifically, the bots listened to his original compositions, which resulted in the payment of over $290,000 in royalties. Now, he's since been convicted of fraud. So you can be charged for this. And, if the FBI comes after you, that is a federal crime. You could end up doing time in a federal penitentiary and having to pay millions, if not thousands of dollars back in all kinds of stuff. Greetings from Castle Hill. All right. I think that's the name of a new band. We may be talking about that. So those attempting to market their music or to renegotiate their contracts with agents or labels may need to ensure that they address bots and other questionable means of creating buzz around their creations. Now, I had an artist on the label about a year ago who believed that they penned a better deal than they had with me, and they moved on. This company was supposedly under Sony Orchard, and there's two names right there that are not necessarily really interconnected, and they're also associated with some levels of fraudulent behavior, and a lot of that is starting to come out. So the cool thing about this is eventually, what you sow, you're going to reap. So be careful what you put out there because it's going to come back, and karma is a bitch. So this thing is a real problem. And where it becomes a problem too is, let's say you got a disgruntled partner. Yeah, you're a female in a band or you're a guy in a band. So if you're a guy in a band and you have an ex-girlfriend that you've scorned, guess what? She can hire a bot farm to stream your music, and next thing you know, you're getting a notice from your aggregator or your music publisher saying, we're pulling your music off Spotify. Even though your music is trending, and you're getting hundreds, if not thousands of followers on your music, and it's all been legit, except somebody decides to take your music and either run a campaign on your track, or they decide to add it to a questionable playlist, which questionable playlists can be connected to fraudulent behavior because they're usually run by bot farms. And I want to clarify that, Kyle, about Sony. So it's that Sony Orchard thing. And that's the thing. It's the Sony Orchard alliance. And I know I've seen that stuff out there, and some people signing to what they call, Sony Orchard. And they, in this particular case, with the artist that left my label, they got their music yanked down off several platforms because they were fraudulently streaming the artist's music to gain streams on it, to sort of boost it up in its popularity. So literally what happens is the sooner that you get your first 1,000 streams, and we know now that the 1,000 stream mark is sort of a gold standard for music on Spotify. And the reason being is that Spotify is not going to start paying you till you make 1,000 streams. So we know that's a gold standard for Spotify. It also becomes part of where your music gets starting to be picked up in the algorithms. So there's an interesting thing. Oh, I'd love to hear that story. Holy crap. Really? Kyle says, Yep, we dealt with that. Oh, yeah. I bet you did. And I mean, I got a call from this person connected with this band and said, yeah, our music got yanked and, we got to pull everything down. We were able to get a new contract with somebody else, but they want us to make sure everything that we have is yanked down. And so I obliged them because, like I'm, why wouldn't I, right? I'm only too willing to cooperate with people. If people think the grass is greener over the septic tank, well, it's not usually. And there's usually a bunch of bullshit or shit underneath it that makes it look greener because it's not usually true. Anybody that knows anything about digital music will tell you, you've got to get hundreds of thousands into millions of streams to make any real money on digital streaming. The good thing about digital streaming is that for the unknown artist, you have a platform to put your music out there before the world, which you never had prior to LimeWire and Napster and those services being shut down. And then that interim between that time and when digital music started going digital with the major record labels, and then you had like Spotify and iTunes and all those spring up to support that. Well, then along comes CD Baby, who was already making CDs, right? That was where their claim to fame was. And then they were able to make a contract for digital streaming services with the major streaming services, and they contracted several of them. I believe DistroKid has the largest distribution chain currently. And if you're like me, I use a label version of DistroKid, which gives me a whole lot more access to a lot more markets than the average, person or some small record labels. Last year, our music hit 160 markets. We were in 195 countries around the world last year. So something's working in terms of this whole thing. And I'm going to say these three things, okay? And there's not necessarily an order to them because they all happen at different points in time. But you've got a thing called reach. Now, reaching into 195 countries was never possible with pre-digital distribution. It wasn't possible with CDs, right? You couldn't break into 195 countries. You couldn't get your music into 160 different markets. It was impossible. Now, with digital streaming services, you have those opportunities to get into a whole lot more markets than you ever had before. So there's that reach part. The second part is discovery. People can discover your music now because your music is really essentially on a level playing field with everybody else that's out there that's even on major record labels. The thing is to get attention to your music. Now, there is nothing illegitimate about getting superfans to stream your music. And I would contend all you need is 1,000 superfans that will agree to stream your music on Spotify as soon as it comes out. Now, tell me you can't find 1,000 Spotify users who would be willing to stream your song once the day it's released. Could you imagine if your song got 1,000 streams the first day it's released? Right? Think of where that's going to go. Now, imagine if you could get those 1,000 people to stream your song 10 times. That's 10,000 streams. Now you've reached another plateau in the Spotify algorithms. Now, could you imagine if those same 1,000 people shared it with another 1,000 people, and those 2,000 people streamed it, I don't know, 5 times? Geez, what's that? I don't know, a few thousand more streams. And before you know it, your music is being pulled up through the algorithms. What happens is on publishing day, your music hits the top of the algorithms. Now, if you've done it right, you've pre-published your music at least, and I would say at least 4 weeks prior to the actual date you want your music to go live. Now, I'm not giving away any real trade secrets here. This is stuff that we do as a record label, and we do it consistently with pretty well every artist on the label, unless there's some burning desire to get the song out sooner, or if it's a re-release. Now, re-releases are a little bit different animal, and I can talk about those later if anybody's interested in hearing about what those actually are. But I can explain that to you later. So going back to this whole bot farm, okay, those trying to navigate the music industry may need to evaluate their contracts and planning strategies that don't endanger their reputation or revenue, because when your music gets pulled, you have to find a way to get it back up there. And some aggregators will not let you put it back up. I'm fortunate, being an independent record label and being able to sign specific guarantees saying, hey, our label never engages in any third party. Zero, that's zero, nada, no third party advertisements, no third party promotion. It's all done from the record label itself. Everything is built organically from the ground up. Now, I can tell you we've had some really, really great fortune this year, and I want to talk about these guys because it does need mention. We've got a band on the label called Brother Leeds from London, Ontario. They won a few awards for their music. They've been nominated for awards for their music, and they've done extremely well on Spotify. And that is where their main listening audience is. Now, they've got some tracks that have garnered over 50,000 streams since they were launched, which I think is pretty cool. Now you look at an album that now the album in total has 226,094 aggregate streams. Now they're starting to rack up a little bit of money because of the result of that. Wait till it hits 1 million streams. And right now they currently have 168 listeners or monthly listeners. But if you look at the stats behind their music, right, they average, any day, there's about 50 or so people listening to their music on an average day. Over the last, since the album has been released on June the 8th of this year, they've had over 1,400 different listeners, almost 1,500 listeners listening to their music. So you can imagine with that many people listening and interacting with your music, how your streams are going to go up. The interesting thing that we're noticing about doing all this now, every single song on that was waterfall released. So we released our music on what we call a waterfall release schedule. That means we put a single out every 2 weeks, and we did the promo in the background for every single and playlist pitched every single. So we put the music out in front of editorial playlisters, and we managed to get the band's music on playlists, and we got it on Release Radar, and got some notifications on Release Radar that people were interacting with your music. And this is all organic. There's nothing that we're doing that is fraudulent. There is nothing that we are doing that would bring into mind any kind of question about the integrity of what we do and how we do it for the artist. So I'll send you that article. It's from Wolf Law, and it's how bots are actually affecting the music industry. And that's just a part of it. The main thing is that some aggregators will not put music back up once it gets yanked off Spotify. And it can take one of these fraudulent artists, right? So if you want to look at an AI band called the Velvet Sundown, who racked up hundreds and hundreds of thousands of streams before 2 albums in, they finally admit that the band is AI, all the images are AI, and there's no real musicians involved, no flesh and blood musicians involved in making that stuff at all. So it just blows my mind when I I see this stuff happening in real time in front of me, and I just shake my head and go, oh, like I saw all this stuff coming, right? We've seen this stuff coming for a long time, and we knew that people were going to game the system, right? Now, eventually, Spotify is going to figure a way to shut this down. But in the meantime, Spotify has these, I don't know if this is legit or not, but I've been asked to possibly, if I was interested in creating a Google Knowledge panel to let you make you more famous and get sales on Google. Well, that's kind of cool. I'd be interested in that, but I don't pay anybody anything. I only pay on results. Everything that we do is result oriented. Everything has to have a return on investment. And so when I look at investing, whether it's time, whether it's money, there has to be a return on that investment. And you have to show me the proof. Don't tell me, show me. I need to see proof that it's possible to be done. And I don't want to be scammed, because there's like so many scammers out there and so many snake oil salesmen out there going, oh yeah, we can make your music famous, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I've heard that so many times before. It's nauseating every time I think about it. But what I want to tell you is that when you go about doing things organically, it can reap other results. So the other thing that we've noticed is a sharp uptake in the rest of the band's catalog. So stuff off their original 2 releases, they had an album before that. They had an EP before that. It has 6-track EP. And that same music is garnering some interesting results, right? So I'm going to look at this over the last 7 days. Here's an example. So track 1, 157 plays. Track 2, 164 plays, 168, 1,556. And the numbers, go up and down from there. But what's interesting is I go to their previous release, Love's Young Nightmare, and the album over the last 6-7 days has got 640 streams. Interesting. And then their EP has picked up 378 streams over the last 7 days as well. So what's happening is you're seeing an uptake in old catalog music. This is why I tell artists, you need to publish your entire catalog from your existence. Well, people aren't really interested in that. Yeah, they will be, because they want to know where you came from. They want to listen to your earliest releases to see how you've developed as an artist, how you've developed as a band. People that take a keen interest in following artists are always interested in seeing how they develop as a band and where they go and what they do over the years that they're out there doing it. And, you know, the downside of this AI stuff that's happening, I want to touch on it briefly. Again, bot farms being the worst, and then bot farms or bots that are actually streaming your music from what look like legit playlists. So these fraudulent artists are going on Spotify and all these places, just like this guy did, right? And what he did was he made $290,000 over a very short period of time, right? Because he used thousands of bots that he programmed to listen to his music on Spotify, and they listened to only his original compositions, and it resulted in a payment of over $290,000 in royalties. Now, oftentimes this happens over a very short period of time, and then the streaming service pick up on the fraudulent behavior and they shut it down. And then they're done, right? Essentially, because they've self-published the music, their aggregator is unable to republish on their behalf. They're unable to use the aggregator or any aggregator to publish it. Remember, it's digitally fingerprinted. The song is digitally fingerprinted. It's now considered soiled material. So it can't go anywhere. But if they've already made the money and run, and this is what's happening, these are like snatch and grab robberies where they're actually, coming up overnight, fake artists, puts their music up there, puts up a fraudulent playlist, adds very popular artists to the fraudulent playlist, and next thing you know, these popular artists are getting dinged, or their record labels are getting dinged saying we're pulling down your music because we've noticed fraudulent behavior, or at least fraudulent behavior is being reported, and we haven't yanked it yet. We're just giving you that warning. Well, you know what's going to happen eventually. If you can't find the playlist that your artist's music is on and you can't get it yanked off there quick enough, guess what's going to happen? That's right. It's going to get yanked. And it may be banned permanently from Spotify. Now, if your main listening audience is on Spotify, you're in a bit of trouble. And you may have to work harder to develop iTunes and Apple Music and others that don't do it that way, because they don't run their platforms the same way that Spotify does. Spotify is a little bit more of an open platform that way. And of course, they leave themselves wide open to this sort of fraudulent behavior. And their only recourse right now is to yank the music. And typically you're not even really given an opportunity to explain, except they say, oh yeah, you get that you're not supposed to engage in fraudulent behavior to get artist music streamed, right? And you say, yes, but then you say in the same breath, like I do, we never use third-party promotion. Never, ever, nada, never done it, never will. Everything I do is 100% organic, and we use organic means to do that. And we use the artist's fan base that they're responsible for cultivating. So if an artist is working hard to cultivate a fan base on social media, mainly Facebook, Instagram, some are on Snapchat, some are using TikTok, some are using other to get followers. If you can get those same people over to follow you, if they're subscribers, and what you're after are premium subscribers to Spotify. Again, 1,000 dedicated followers on Spotify, and if they all have legitimate accounts with Spotify, every time they stream your song, that's 1,000 streams. Again, 10 streams is 10,000. 100 streams is 100,000 streams. Now, it's conceivable that most of those thousand people could listen to your song 100 times over the course of 2 or 3 months. So it's conceivable that within 3 months you could hit 100,000 streams, even if they just listen to your song once a day. Now, if it's on a playlist, it's likely being listened to once a day. if it made its way onto 10 playlists and it's being played once a day, that's 10 plays a day. That's 300 plays a month, basically, just off playlists alone. And those things grow because people share them. Start up your own community playlist on Spotify, add your music, add some of your friends' music, and add other popular tracks to your playlist so that people will start interacting with your playlist and go, oh, this is a great playlist. I'm going to join it. Make it public, make it available, make it joinable. You can do all these things to help promote your music and get it out in front of more people. Remember, I talked about reach, I talked about discovery, and the third is engagement. Okay? How do you get engagement? You get engagement by getting discovered. You get engagement by getting into territories, getting into markets that you didn't exist in before. As I said before, 195 countries. Our artists' music were heard in 195 countries last year. We were penetrated 160 different markets, and everybody's music grew exponentially on the label last year, largely because some of the heavier hitters on the label have had some really great successes. Now, it doesn't hurt to have, a more popular artist on your label. One of the artists that we have on the label that's the most popular is the band called Helix. Now, Helix has been around since 1974. They started recording in 1979 and haven't looked back. They've got 2 albums coming out this year, and we're going to be digitally releasing those albums as well. But, just taking a look at what happens, when you look at the number of playlists that your artist's music ends up on. Okay, Helix is literally on hundreds of playlists. 80s hair metal rock, greatest hits, classic hits, 80s hair bands, greatest hits. This is Helix, rock love songs. There's all kinds of playlists, and then they end up on algorithmic playlists as well. So there's a real huge, huge opportunity that exists for you to go, oh my God, look at what's happening here with their music. Now, because their music is on the label, it adds more legitimacy to the label, and people start paying attention to the label. They start paying attention to the other artists that are on the label and looking at what's happening to their music. But we've got, Helix has got albums and singles that are in the millions of streams, right? Some of them are in the double-digit millions of streams. The cool thing about that is that it adds legitimacy to the other artists on the label. What it also means, too, there's an expectation there that everybody that's on the label is going to continue to raise the bar on what they release. So, when we look at tracks, I'm not just interested in how well the song is produced. I'm not just interested in the mix. I'm not just interested in how well the song is mixed and mastered. I want to know, how well is it performed? Is the song memorable? Does it have a hook? Are there things in that song that cause me to be singing the melody in my head or humming the melody and then singing phrases, like maybe chorus phrases of the song, over and over and over again because they stuck with me? They became memorable parts of the song to me. The songs that do well, that I see that do well anywhere, are songs that resonate with people. Either the content of the song, the lyrics of the song have a story that people can relate to, or the song has, a rhythm, has a melody, has a beat that people can really get into and groove to, and they go, I really dig this. I really like what this artist is doing. And then they start exploring their whole catalog of music. And then they start looking at other artists that are on the same label and go, oh, God, everybody's producing really quality music. So we continually encourage our artists to raise the bar. And my job as the owner of the record label is to push on those artists to have them put out their best product, right? I can't market something that is less than, and the artist, every single artist on the label sets their own bar. If you set the bar high, you're going to have to continue to reach that bar or beyond. And I really expect people to find a way to incrementally move beyond where they were on the last release. Now, if it's part of a batch, if it's part of an album release and the tracks are already recorded, everything is already there. What's really important then is the sequencing of how those tracks are released, the story behind those tracks. Is there enough of a story to be told as those tracks are being released in order to engage people? Or is this something where you might want to do like 4 single releases and then release the whole album and push on the whole album? Now, we've had some great luck with some of the releases we've done in waterfall releases because every single song, especially if a band's been around for a long time, like Helix have been around for 50 years. This is their 51st year, and they're still touring, right? They're right now going to be touring the whole month of October. I think they've got 6-7 shows in the month of October, and they're touring all over from Ontario all the way out to the West Coast. So some really interesting stuff that's happening as a result of the music being out there and still being relevant in the music world. And that's the most important part for artists, especially artists that are touring artists. They want their music to help create some level of relevancy. And, you know, we've even heard things like booking agents looking at how many streams artists are getting on download and streaming services. And that becomes part of the draw to get them playing shows, because the belief is if they're that well liked out in the digital world, people are going to want to go to a live show and actually see them play. So there's some huge opportunities involved there. And of course, like I said, we're constantly looking at how do we get our artists to continue to raise the bar on whatever they're doing. And if you're not raising the bar on your music personally, and remember, you set the bar as soon as you release your first song. So if you release your very best song, everything you release after that better be better than it. Because if it's not, people are going to go, well, wait a minute, this is going in reverse. We're not seeing a gradual progression of improvement here, right? People want to see you develop as an artist. Part of the engagement factor is seeing you grow as an artist and listening to the maturity of what goes on in your tracks. Everything from the way the composition is written, to the way the melody is written, to how complex the song is, to is there a story behind the song? Now, the story behind the song may not have anything to do with the lyrics. The story behind the song could be what was going on in the background. And this is where Helix has a background story for every song that's being released. So we're hoping to do, we're going to be releasing their 3rd album, which kind of was part of their independent thing. So there were like 3 albums in there, albums that were released by Capitol EMI that we cannot release because the rights are owned by Capitol EMI. However, everything else is owned by Helix, and we're able to continue to release these albums. So we're going to be releasing an album called Back for Another Taste. A great album. Some cool stuff I've done to that album to enhance it. And we're going to be telling stories behind every song. There was stuff behind every song. For example, there's a song on there called The Storm, and it was filmed in the Massey Ferguson farm implement plant in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. That was back when they filmed videos on location. So there's a bunch of stories behind that. There's an actual video for the song, and we're going to take the video, and I'm going to take the video and sync it back up to the new digitally remastered track so that we can push it out again new to everybody that maybe heard it originally. Now they're going to hear it in a refresh version. And thank you again. Thanks, Finn, for the comment. Appreciate that. Hopefully the information you find here is helpful. This is not a large infomercial to get people to join Indie Tunes Records. However, you should check us out at IndieTunesRecords.com or just IndieTunes.com. All you have to do is go there. There it is right there. I just put it up there. If you go to IndieTunes.com, click on that link. I put it in the chat room. If you go there, you'll find all the artists that are on our label and kind of what they're doing and what we're doing with their music. Some artists on the label have said, you know what, we don't want to charge 50 cents a track. People can pay us whatever they want to download the whole album. So we've even tried that methodology as well. Pay the artist what you think the album is worth. They make 75 cents on every dollar. So for every digital download, they're making 75 cents if it's $1. Right now, if it's 50 cents a track, they're making 75% of 50 cents, right? So roughly, I don't know, what is that? It's half of what they would make at the 75 cents. So probably, I don't know, 37.5 cents per download. But when you think about that 37.5 cents, it would take you hundreds of streams to make that same 37 cents. So at 37 cents a track for a download, you download an album for $5, the band is earning 3/4 of that $5 per download. So that's not bad. It's roughly $4 that they're making off a download of a 10-track album. Now think about that. If you were to sell a digital album, you've got the cost of overhead, you got the cost of getting it out there, you got the cost of distribution, all those things. When you can do this from a digital format, it's a great way to get it done. Well, I didn't think I'd have enough to talk about this week, but man, there's a whole lot more we can cover, and I plan on covering in weeks to come. I want to thank you for joining me tonight. I want to thank you people, Keith Hill, Kyle Alt, Twitch director, for joining us on here. Finn, thanks you for joining us. Akeem Quadri, thank you for joining us. I'm interested in that. I can find you, Akeem, and but you better not be scamming me, because I'm not interested in scams. I'm really interested in legitimate results that are found organically. Well, this has been the Indie Show. And I'm going to play a video for you to watch. If you want to watch an interesting video, this is really, really cool. So I'm going to pop the video back up here. So bear with me a second here, and I'm going to put up the video. There it is right there. And I'm going to go back and change the audio back over to stereo so you can give this a listen in true stereo format. Before I do that, I just want to say, this has been the Indie Show. I'm Kenny. You're not. Have a great Indie week, everybody. Watch the video and enjoy. This is about the dog days of summer. As summer winds down, this is called The White Parts of Her Town. This is by my wicked twin, Brent Durner, who is original lead guitar player for the band Helix. And here it is.
She likes the sun and the sand and the UV her sandals packed, drives a Sunbird sedan. She keeps the comfort zone close, but my favorite